The Holloway Curse. The first thing Emily Crosswood noticed about Black Hollow was the silence. Not the kind of silence that calms you, but the kind that presses down on your chest and makes you look over your shoulder. As she drove through the one-lane road that wound its way into the heart of the town, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Black Hollow looked like it hadn't aged since the late 1800s. The storefronts were faded, their signs chipped and weathered. Cobblestone streets, slick with morning dew, gleamed under the weak light of the overcast sky. The air smelled of damp earth and decayed leaves. It was the kind of place you didn't stumble upon unless you were meant to be there. Emily was here for a story. The Holloway family, an affluent, enigmatic clan, had vanished without a trace 2 weeks ago. Their sprawling estate, Greywood Manor, was perched on the edge of a dense forest, its Gothic spires rising above the treetops like watchful sentinels. The police had scoured the house and surrounding grounds, but found no signs of foul play, no evidence of struggle. The family had simply disappeared. The locals were no help. When Emily tried to ask questions, they avoided her gaze, muttering vague warnings about leaving well enough alone. But Emily wasn't one to back down. This was the kind of story that could make her career, and she'd faced stranger situations than this before. Armed with her recorder, notebook, and a flashlight, she decided to investigate Greywood Manor herself. The estate was even more imposing up close. Vines snaked up the stone walls, their tendrils curling around shattered window frames. The front doors creaked ominously as Emily pushed them open, revealing a grand foyer bathed in shadows. Dust motes floated in the beam of her flashlight, and the air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay. Her footsteps echoed as she moved through the house. The parlor was filled with antique furniture, draped in white sheets like specters. A grand piano stood in the corner, its keys yellowed with age. Above it hung a portrait of the Holloway family, a father, a mother, and 2 children. Their painted expressions were solemn, almost lifelike, and their eyes seemed to follow her as she moved. It wasn't just unsettling, it was wrong. The shadows in the painting felt deeper than they should have been, almost alive. As she climbed the staircase to the 2nd floor, a faint noise stopped her in her tracks, a creak like the sound of someone shifting their weight. Her flashlight swept the hallway, but there was nothing there. She told herself it was just the house settling. Old buildings made noises after all, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger. The master bedroom was untouched, as if the Holloways had stepped out for a moment and planned to return. A 4-poster bed dominated the room, its canopy thick with cobwebs. On the dresser sat a small, ornate box. Intrigued, Emily opened it. Inside was a piece of parchment, brittle and yellowed with age. A single word was scrawled across it in a jagged hand. "Run!" Emily's breath caught in her throat. The door behind her creaked shut. Slowly she turned, her flashlight trembling in her hand. The hallway beyond the doorway was dark, impossibly so, as if the light had been swallowed whole. She stepped out into the corridor, her pulse pounding in her ears. The darkness seemed to press in closer, and then she heard it. Faint whispers, indistinct and layered, coming from every direction. Her name was among them. "Emily!" a voice hissed, low and guttural, so close it made her jump. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice trembling. No answer, only the whispers, growing louder, more insistent. The air grew colder, her breath visible in the beam of her flashlight. Panic set in, and she bolted down the stairs, her footsteps echoing like gunshots in the oppressive silence. The front door slammed shut before she could reach it. She yanked at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers were all around her now, a cacophony of voices overlapping, rising to a deafening crescendo. "Why are you here, Emily?" one voice snarled, distinct and chilling. She turned to face the room, her back pressed against the door. The shadows in the corners seemed to ripple, coalescing into forms that were almost human but impossibly distorted. Their eyes glowed faintly, malevolent and unblinking. "You brought this upon yourself," another voice said, cold and accusatory. Desperate, Emily ran toward the parlor, where the grand piano loomed. The shadows followed, closing in, their shapes shifting and writhing. She stumbled, falling to her knees, and her flashlight rolled away, its beam flickering wildly. In the dim light, she saw the Holloway family standing at the edge of the room. Their faces were pale, their eyes empty, and their mouths moved in unison as they chanted something she couldn't understand. But she didn't need to understand the words to know what they meant. She was not leaving this house. The last thing she saw was the shadows enveloping her, their cold grip pulling her into the darkness. Emily Crosswood's recorder was found on the steps of Greywood Manor weeks later. The tape inside was filled with static, but faintly beneath the noise, whispers could be heard, and one name repeated over and over: her own.